Hello, language lovers. Welcome back to LingoCast, the podcast of your language journey. My name is Sam. For those who don't know me, if you're listening to this for the first time, this is LingoCast. Now, with me, Sam, as part of the team. And I'm going to say hello to the co host, the one you all know, Eliseu. How are you, Eliseu?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy. You are doing great at the intro of the episode. Yeah, how are
Thank
you
you.
doing?
Thank you so much, man. I'm learning from you. I'm trying to, get the mastery of the podcast. For someone who's so experienced in doing it, who has interviewed people like Steve Kaufman, uh, Luca Lampariello. Yeah, bro.
You? I interviewed you
Me,
as well.
myself, Polyglot Sam, the legendary Polyglot Sam, of course. Uh, yeah, I'm so happy to be here, man, and always nice to share a little bit of our experience with language learning, the tools that we encountered in our journey, and also other stuff that may pop up in this conversation. So it's a very natural. We try to do this very naturally and keep it real, right? Like for example, look at this earbuds right now. They're all like a little circle here. Uh, so before we jump in today's episode, let's talk a little bit about Patreon, right? Because we have this Patreon program where you can support us and get some awesome material as well for you. Complete episodes. Some episodes will be not full for everyone to listen to. There will be a part of it, and the complete part will be on for our patrons. Also, you get access to the blog and much more, like Eliseo will tell you.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to support our project, first of all, don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms and in your favorite podcast platform as well, and on YouTube as well. And don't forget to like this episode. And if you want to be part of our Patreon program, you can find all the links in the description of this episode. Then you can be part of our Telegram group. You can receive all the full episodes before they being published. You can we can have calls. You can send questions to our guests and much more. So there you choose the category that fits the best for in your budget, and you can start supporting us. And if you want to support us even more, you can support us via PayPal as well. The link is also in the description of this episode. You can find in the description everything you need to start supporting LingoCast.
Thank you so much, Eliseo. So yeah, guys, make sure you check it out. You're gonna love it. So today's episode, we're gonna talk about stories, learning languages with stories, and how stories are important in language learning. How the context of talking about something specific, telling a story, which is like progressive in the way that like is one story that starts, it has a beginning, a middle, like and an end. And I feel like this way, not only I think that, but also other experts in language learning have written about this, have talked about this. Yeah, so this can be really helpful for you because that's how our brain works. That's how we understand. That's with context. We know what's being talked about, and it's much easier to absorb and learn vocabulary through that kind of system. What do you think about stories, Eliseo? How do you think stories can help in language learning?
Well, I think it's great. Of course, the first time you're reading a story or you're listening to it, it's something new, so you are very interested. It helps you to be focused on the story and to try to understand the maximum you can. But on the other hand, after that, I know already about you in Chinese that you listen to the same story many times, and I think this is very important to do. And this is not a fun part because, of course, you will notice that you understand more and more every time. But then it's important, but can be a little bit boring. How do you deal with that with Chinese once you are listening to the stories?
Absolutely, I agree. The same thing over and over sounds like a chore. And what happens is I don't have a lot of vocabulary in Chinese. So if I try and, of course, I can try and read like a new story, and or for this specifically, I did something. I created my own story, right? I got the most used like verbs in Chinese, and I put them in a story. But if I started reading or listening to a new one, I won't understand like a lot, right? Even if it's very basic, I will understand just a little bit. And I feel like I need to be more comfortable with these basics that I'm learning right now so I can move on. And also, it's going to be better for me because I'll understand much more. Normally, I don't do this. Normally, I go to an upper stage from my, like what I'm learning in each language. But with Chinese, it's a different thing because I feel like if I listen to something in Chinese now, which is like a normal story, I won't understand anything, honestly. Like I will understand maybe like the most basic phrases, but like I won't understand what the story is about, like what they're mentioning because I lack vocabulary. Therefore,
Mhm.
I'm listening to the same story because of that. Because in the future, I want to be able to really understand when they mention these things that I'm learning. Right? I don't want to be like completely lost because that's how I look at Chinese. It's just a different kind of challenge for me. Since I can't grasp on anything, even with Russian, I can grasp it to Serbian, for example, because I've been learning Serbian for longer than Russian, so I can find myself when I'm confused or lost. But in Chinese, I can't like grab onto anything. So that's why I'm taking my time with these, even though it's boring, more boring. I agree. I still feel like that's the best strategy for me right now. But it really depends on your style of learning, on
And the
your
level as well, right?
the level, mainly the level.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
because I wanted to ask you that because, for example, what Stephen Krashen says that we only learn from things that we understand. So when we have, for example, a short story, when we try to turn this short story that is not comprehensible into something comprehensible to us, in a language, in any language like Indo-European for us, we will be able to guess some words. Will be similar to Latin, to Greek, or to whatever, and you will get it. But with Chinese, no. And in Chinese, you need to also memorize the character. So one thing more, how do you deal with that? It's sometimes just a simple story. To turn it into a comprehensible input, you need much more effort than uh, in other languages, especially the languages that you learned before.
I feel like you're absolutely right. I feel like with Chinese, you have to do. I think you have to break it into different kinds of studying, like just like that. Like you can't, for in my opinion, maybe you can try, but I don't think you can try and learn the characters and understand like the vocabulary or what's being read at the same time, right? Because in Chinese, I feel like there are three things. There's like the words being said to you, right? Like what's being said, the sound. There is the script, the characters, and there's also pinyin, right? I feel like there are three things. That's just me because as a foreigner, someone who's starting with Chinese, that's how I feel about it. Because, for example, when I see pinyin, then I'm more familiar with pinyin, and I can like, oh, okay, so I know this, I know that. When I look at the characters, maybe I don't know much. Maybe like one or two, like that's it. And then there's the listening part, which is totally different. So I feel like when you're gonna study a language like that with like tones, with pinyin, like with characters, and that's not close to anything it's not related. I feel like you have to really, before you start studying, you see, oh, so now I'm gonna practice my listening and trying to understand what's being said through the sounds, and do that and listen to the story. Now I'm gonna read and learn new characters. Okay, so you did that, so we're gonna do something different, right? I want to learn the characters now. So just focus on the characters. Because for me, I can't multitask like that. I can't do everything at the same time. For me, it's like impossible. So I divide them like that. So today I'm gonna learn characters. Today I'm gonna listen. Today I'm gonna just read out aloud and see if I can pronounce the pinyin properly here, like with the tones and stuff. So I feel like if it's a language like that, you need to really break into different steps, different phases.
Yeah, was what you were saying. I was trying to imagine that, and I was imagining like Luca Lamparello has this bi-direction translation method, and I was thinking about it because if you imagine for Chinese, like usually you have okay target language and language you speak well, but if with Chinese, I think you would need to have that the characters, pinyin, the language, and maybe we should also have like the translation word by word, so you can see what is where in the phrase, because the position of the words are completely different and how they express it. So yeah, I think in Chinese, I think that's why Chinese will take 5-10 times more 10 times like longer to learn or to reach the same levels as other languages.
Yeah, I feel like you just cracked the code there. I think not putting too much pressure on yourself when learning languages like Chinese is a great idea. Like, don't expect to learn it fast and like as fast as the other ones. That's not gonna
100%.
happen.
100%. And I wanted to ask you, have you ever bought a easy reader book, for example?
No, but I did look at some. Some friends have showed me. Also, one friend had an account for, I forgot the name of this platform, but there's an account that you can pay. I think something like Scrap, or something. I can't remember, but you can pay there. By the way, this is a very, once I find the name of the actual name of the platform, I can share with you guys. But and I don't know if it was Scribe, something like this. You can you can read any books available there. So you can pay. There's like a subscription. You pay like monthly. It's cheap, and you can read anything available there. And they have the easy, like, languages book by the ones with sorry, not easy languages. My bad. The stories, the language stories with the ones from Olly Richards. So you can find those books in the platform. So it's, if you want to like save money, or like, if you like this idea of the subscriptions, I think it's a good idea. Of course, you don't have the actual book, like you only have like digital access there, but it's still, if you want to save money, that's a good option. So a friend of mine had that, and we were reading together. I think the stories are great. We were doing it for French. I remember I learned a lot of new words, even though my French is not a beginner level. There, I found stuff that actually helped me. Because in stories, that's the good thing about stories, right? Stuff will show up that you're not used to seeing all the time. Because in dialogues, we tend to use the same kind of vocabulary. Like we're using the vocabulary right now, for example, for explaining this, right? But when you're telling a story, it's a whole different, like it's a different kind of vocabulary that you're gonna see.
Also, because the story has a specific topic, right? And there will be the words related to this topic.
Exactly. Also, they're descriptive. So they're going to see, so now they found a tree. In that tree, there was a house, like this color, this size, made of this, right? So in a dialogue, I would never say that, right? Why would I bring up a tree like that, or like, talk about how the house is made, for example. So these kind of things are really, really good. I remember that was specifically in French. That's why I mentioned this example. So I feel like this is really good for language learners, and even though it's a different kind of vocabulary, it's still going to help you when you want to express yourself, because eventually if you want to express something different than what you always say in your dialogue, the stories will help you, like, definitely, because we tend to say the same things, right, all the time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I've used one Polish book with easy stories, and I had this issue, like, even if they said it was for beginners, I was like seeing some like grammatical structures and some vocabulary that it was not for a beginner, And on one hand, I was saying, I think that back then it was too early to learn that. I should just try to understand. But on the other hand, I was like, I will never use some of these words, and I think it's also a dilemma that we have when you are trying to learn with stories, right? Because as you said, like, when every story has a topic, and the topic sometimes is specific, and sometimes this topic is not related to your life. For example, I remember I was reading once a story about hiking. They were hiking in the mountain. I have never gone hiking, so I would never use that. Maybe even in Portuguese, I don't know some of these words. So I think it depends as well. And I think, but you found a very nice solution for that, right? With AI.
No, yeah, absolutely. Before I jump into that, I wanted to say something real quick. If you are someone like Catolon, she loved reading. So if you really love this book, let's say I want to read Dostoevsky, I don't care, I'm gonna read this in Russian, even though I'm like beginner intermediate, I'm gonna try and read this book. I mean, if you love it, if you absolutely love it, you're like her, and you want to read this book, I think you should go for it, right? Like if you absolutely are in love, you're obsessed with this, then yes. And you're gonna take your time, right? You're gonna be okay. So this is gonna be page one today, just one page, and I'm gonna learn as much vocabulary as I can. It's gonna be really slow, of course. But like she mentioned some of that in her book, in the book I'm reading actually. I actually took a break, but I'm taking it back again. The book from Carolom, where she mentions the fact that she learned a lot of Russian by just reading one book, for example, or like a couple of books. But she really loves long form books, like the books that you can finish. She really loved that. So if you are in love with that, then you should try it, even though it's not your level. If you love it, I think it's worth it, right? But yeah, it's not for everyone. Definitely not for me, I would say. Like, not for everyone. This advice is not for everyone.
Yeah,
You
100%.
asked about AI. So about AI, I feel like nowadays we have this tool, and I keep thinking like how much time saver this is. Like it saves so much time, because before, to learn things, like to learn sentences, to learn verbs, you'd have to like learn them in a book. Like the book would show you, you wouldn't be able to choose what you wanted to learn first or what you needed. Now you have this ability to choose, and this is what I'm doing with Chinese, for example. I'm like I go on I literally go on Chat GPT and I ask, for example, tell me the 10 most common verbs in Chinese, and then it gives me the 10 most common ones. And then I say, well, I think we also talked about this before, but here we can dive a little deeper. So I'll say the other prompt would be, can you please put them into a story with context? Make it very simple, A1 level, right? And put it there. And then they create a story. And you can even add more prompts. Like, I want to talk about someone throwing a party, at their house and inviting their neighbors, right? So you can do that. And then, okay, the story is created. And then you can even ask with Chinese, like we mentioned before, Chinese is a little specific. So you can ask, add the pinyin for the text, add the translation. And then actually I just asked for the pinyin, and then I put it on Google Translate because I wanted to hear the pronunciation, since the ChatGPT doesn't do that for you. So I went to Google Translate with the story that ChatGPT gave me, with that the dialogue, story, whatever, normally a story. And then I put it on translator, Google Translate, and then I can listen to it. Like, and I do it like I said before. I do it through phases. So first I'm just gonna listen and just pay attention to the sound. Then I'm gonna read together and listen, for example. Then I'm gonna try and read myself what is being told. Then I'm gonna learn characters, for example. So I think this is a great way to add more stuff that you actually need, right? Like you were saying before, the problem was sometimes when we use a tool, like for example stories, or a book with stories, is that a lot of the vocabulary is not for you, because it's a general vocabulary that for a story, specific story. So you can kind of change, you can kind of go navigate through that by giving those prompts to AI and actually creating a story with the vocab that you actually need, right? That you actually are in need of. So I think this is a great way. Have you ever done that, Eliseu?
Yeah, I've done that, but for me, it's also important to have. I will start talking about some resources, because for me, it's also important to have the option to listen to it as a podcast, for example. And I like to have this option. And one of the examples is, you mentioned already, the short stories from Olly Richards. I bought one of these books for myself, for Russian, like 2 years ago, I think about it. And back then, one of the things that I have to complain is they say for beginners, but honestly, I would say it's not even. It's like B1, I would say, the language of the first book. So it was a little bit too hard than I expected. So back then was like, if I would need, for example, I like to highlight the words in the physical book. And when I was highlighting too much. So when people say like to learn from input, where you need to understand like 70-80% to be able to have the rest from the context, it was too hard for me back then. So, and now I started using it again, and now I feel that I understand like 90%, and this 10% I can get by context, or if I know learn a new word, the words they repeat. So for me, it became a better resource now when I arrive at this level. So yeah, and I bought also the audio version, so I can work on the book. And once I saw all the words, I check the words I don't know, I start listening to it, or I listen and read at the same time. But sometimes I am just listening to it while I go somewhere, and I remember the meanings that I found when I was reading it and checking the words. So for me, yeah, I found it actually. I found out that it's a good, very good method that I liked very much. I hadn't tried before, and but I think everything depends on how you use it at the end, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think the problem you mentioned, I think it goes for every single story-based tool, even the ones that are like great. I'm not this one saying this one is bad, but even the ones that are accurate. A lot of the times, what will happen is like we were talking before. When you're telling a story, eventually, a lot of the vocabulary there won't be like part of that level. And I think that happens also because in order to have context, you need to use some different words. Like in order to have this specific context for a story, you won't use this level, like the proper level words all the time. So a lot of the times, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Because I saw this also in lingua.com is another website, lingua.com, that has stories as well. And I looked some of those stories with my teacher, with my Russian teacher, so I can actually like talk more about this, which like I'm not an expert at Russian, but she is. And she said that the stories there were very advanced. She was saying that the stories were super advanced for each level. It wasn't right. Like, for example, you look at A2, it was more like B1, B2. And like B1 for her was more like B2, C1, So, and if she's saying that, she has experience with that, with teaching, with language. So it's really tough. I think stories, yeah, tend to
Yeah,
do
but
that.
do you think it's possible to have a story that will have an interesting story, compelling, that it's you won't have any vocab from a much higher level?
That's tricky. I think maybe with AI now,
Maybe
I
with
think
AI, yeah.
yeah, we can definitely like do something that's at least close to that, right? But
100%.
I think that a story that's been written, for example, with like a book, like an actual like fiction book, even though if you use it as a language learning material, like if it was created as language learning material, but if you want to have that fiction style to it, like telling a story, I feel like it's really, really hard unless you use AI or something to make sure that you're not going to use any other vocabulary.
And still, I think I still want to talk a little bit about short stories from Olly Richards, but I don't know if you feel that, but I feel that AI makes mistakes, and there is also the chance that you will memorize something wrongly, and or sometimes AI will go a little bit different from the prompt that you wrote there. Like it will write words, for example, you say only A1, and AI will also end up writing some words that are not A1. So I think AI still have a lot to improve. But how do you rate the stories that AI have been writing to you?
Yeah, I think it's you brought up a very valid point. I think it's there are good sides and bad sides, right? The good sides is you can choose like what you want to see there as in a story specifically and create that. The bad side is exactly what you said. Sometimes some words won't fit into that category, but even worse than that, I think, even worse than that is the fact that sometimes the words used there, like people don't ever use, like in their speech. There's a problem also
Mhm.
with AI because I feel like they take this information out of database or like searched and prompts and stuff like that, keywords, right? And there's a problem because there's a different language when you write stuff than when like in real life
Yeah,
when you speak.
it's a
The AI
very
doesn't
good.
process that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, AI process only the written language. It's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and when it comes to the Olly Richards books, I wanted to say something that Luca Lamparello always says is very important, and I agree with him. that I miss when I'm reusing the short stories is you do not have translation. I think it would be much better if you would have one page in your target language and the other one in the language that you understand, like in English could be. So the fact that I need to go with translator to check some words by myself. Of course, some of the words it's written in, you have like a glossary at the end, but still, I would like to have would be much easier not to compare grammar, to compare structures, to not do everything by myself. I think I we just waste a lot of time doing that. So that's something I would improve in with Olly Richard's stories.
I agree 100%. Like, I think you definitely need that. And if you don't want to see them, you just skip the page, right? Like, if you would just want to read the story and you're like, I'm good in my level. I just want to, really immersion. I don't want to have the translation. Just skip the page. I think it would be amazing. And also, like, even for someone who has that level and they are in doubt about something, or they don't know, they're not sure about something, they can just go and look at the page at this word and then continue, right?
Yeah,
So
100%. I wanted to ask you, have you ever used, we already talked about Duolingo, we are here talking about Duolingo again, but have you ever used Duo Stories, the Duolingo Stories?
I have for Japanese, um, and it was really hard for me because I don't know if I don't know how to use the tool well. Maybe that's like I'm not very experienced with Duolingo Stories, so I can't say that I mastered this tool. No, it's actually the opposite. I feel like I used a couple of times, but what I struggled with was I was an absolute beginner, and they didn't have the translation like the stories that you mentioned from Olly. They didn't have the translation for Japanese. They had a story there, and the story was there, and there's a dialogue and stuff like that. But I couldn't understand a lot, and I ended up not using it anymore. I don't know if there's a way to translate that. I don't know if I missed something, but I thought it was really hard for me, so I never used it again. Have you used that Duolingo Stories?
I've I I've used this, but I don't remember when. A long time ago, I did for French, I think, and it was not bad. They had some dialogues, and you could check some words back then. I don't know how it is now. I don't know if even if it still exists. I believe so, but I think it was like very simple. I think that a secret a little about learning from stories is it cannot be too long, but it cannot be too short. Of course, depends on the level you have, right? But if you are trying to break the A2 B1 plateau, I think the stories they need to be a little bit longer, like the ones from Olly Richards, for example. And they are divided in chapters, which also help you because if you would need to read 10 pages, it will be too much. But if you read 4 or 5, it's kind of okay. So I think it's also a good point for Olly Richards' book that maybe I think it's a little bit more because the more you read, the more you are exposed to vocabulary, to frequent vocabulary, right? So I think so, but maybe I'm saying nonsense. Maybe it's changed and it's much better now, and I have no idea.
Yeah, I was a while ago too. So like, I'm not sure how it is right now. I have to check it out. So I was looking at some of the stories here. They seem to have added a lot of more languages now.
Mm.
Um, so I feel
Have
like,
seen what languages?
yeah. Let me show you. So here they have even Serbian, which they don't even have on Duolingo app. Like they don't have
Wow.
Serbian on the app, but here in Duolingo Stories they do, because also like these stories are a community project, right? So a lot of the stories here they are made from people who actually native speakers who just want to
Ah, I
support.
know. I know. Okay, yeah.
So here they have from Arabic. They have Asturian, man,
That's
Catalan.
actually interesting. What you're saying is the non-official Duolingo stories because Duolingo also have their own
Yes.
stories on their page. And I remember I've seen
Oh.
about this one that they have many languages. And yeah, I haven't tried this one that you were saying. I tried only the one in Duolingo's page.
Oh, I used this one. That's what the one I used. It was the unofficial one. I
Yeah,
hadn't noticed that there were two.
I remember back then Duolingo stories was available only for French, Spanish, Portuguese, I think. Portuguese, yeah, Portuguese and maybe German. I'm not sure. I think these languages. So yeah, that's why also I was not very interested in learning that. I already could speak that languages back then, but still, if they have more languages now, it can be a good resource.
I don't think they
Also, a
do.
good point.
Mm.
Just one thing. I think a good point about Duolingo stories, if I remember well, that they had dialogues, and I think dialogues are very important. So you can see how people interact, right?
No, absolutely. I think it's still limited. Like the languages are very limited in the stories because I remember I used Duolingo for Chinese, for example, or for Russian, and I didn't see the stories, so didn't have that option. So I only used the unofficial one. But I think you should be careful if you use the unofficial one because it's not that the information there is false or something. No, but maybe it's not for your level. Maybe it can happen to you. What happened to me with Japanese that you don't understand the characters yet, so that's too much for you and you need to but don't get discouraged. And also, man, like something I think is the most important thing, like if there is something that should be a huge takeaway out of this, I really feel like the audience should pay attention to that, which is if you are someone like me who gets overwhelmed with too many tools. So if someone who gets overwhelmed and you are looking always using different tools all the time or trying to find new ones, maybe that's not good for you. I think if you are someone like me, you should simplify your language learning. So that's why actually Catolom said the thing about the book as well. It's a way to focus on one material that can also help you make sure that you are doing something progressive, right? And that you're not getting overwhelmed with so many options, especially nowadays, because there's like a billion ways to learn languages, man. And I feel like you need to find something that you're going to use for a while. You can use multiple tools. That's fine. I use multiple tools. I'm just saying that try and simplify your language learning routine so that you won't get overwhelmed and end up giving up or not being efficient. And if you keep changing all the time the tools that you're using, it's not going to be beneficial to you, right?
100%. It's important to stick to one material. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also want to talk about another kind of stories. Don't know if you have ever used, but I've used a lot when I started learning new languages. LingQ. And LingQ has first they have these basic phrases, and they have the mini stories. And I've used even with some students, and I like that. Even if once I was talking with Steve Kaufman when he was here in Warsaw, and he said, "Yeah, I mean, one of the problems about the mini stories is that they are not that compelling." So it will appear some words that are a little bit more advanced. So I think like for the mini stories, in the second story, you already see some words that are B2, for example. But well, I think it's it's a great tool because you can listen to that as a podcast. You can leave it like to repeat, and you work on that, you on the whole story, check the words, and then you just leave it to repeat and go doing something else, and you keep listening to the story that you worked on. So it can be also a great tool when you want to listen to stories, read them, or listen and read them together. I think you can use it and can be a very good tool for different levels. You can choose the level you want, but specifically talking about mini stories. Also, I found out for Belarusian that they also have some dialogues for beginners that would it was also very useful for me when I started. So yeah, have you ever tried LingQ or the mini stories?
I haven't tried for a long time. I think I checked the page once and I saw one story. I feel like it's great because one, it has Steve Kaufman in it, which is a very known and respected polyglot, and knows about how to learn languages. And he is advising, he's like helping create this thing, so make this thing work. So I feel like absolutely is a great tool just for this fact. And yeah, and I know that his son is the one that made the whole logistics part of it, the actual website and the programming and stuff like that. So I feel like if someone has done it and they know how you should learn languages and they are creating a product on that, I think that it's a great product already. And I also feel like it's more accurate. LingQ is more accurate than even like the short stories by Olly Richards, because I feel like that platform offers you more support when it comes to learning new vocabulary and not understanding stuff that can happen sometimes with the books. Not saying that the book is bad or anything, but like you said, the only thing you have is the glossary as an option. So you have to translate stuff yourself. You have to keep looking actively for, and it can be challenging. I feel like Link offers more support in that sense. But yeah, I haven't used it much. So, but I'll definitely will try it more to see and give a more dived in, like deep review, because you can talk about Link in a actual episode if in the
Yeah,
future if you
that's
guys
true.
want to
Yeah.
listen to it.
Yeah, let us know. You can write in the comments if you wanna one episode about Link. So how to use Link and how from different levels and all tips we can have. Also for Link, I have never used the paid version, so I use only the free version. But I know that you can save the words, and they have something like spaced repetition for these words that you save that you want to learn. So it can be even better than what I've seen. So yeah, I think Link can be also a very good tool. But moving for the next two, I think maybe the next two are maybe I would say my favorite resources when it comes to stories. And the first one is Assimil. Have you ever used Assimil?
No, because I'm poor. No, no, but actually, it's funny. But like honestly, I don't wanna attack Assimil. I don't know who owns Assimil. I don't want to
It's a
attack
French
them.
company. Yeah.
The French company. So okay, so that's the thing. The currency fact does not help us Latin, like people who live in like Latin America. So it ends up being very expensive. Therefore, I haven't ever bought any SMU like programs because they are very expensive for a Brazilian and any Brazilian. Not just because I'm poor. Like I think for any Brazilian it's expensive.
Do you know how
Uh,
much it costs in Brazil
I have
nowadays?
to. I don't know specifically right now, but I remember being astonished by the price, and then therefore like I was like running from it. But but apparently, let me just see on Mercado Libre because I think it's actually cheaper.
Yeah, why you were researching for that? Actually, my language learning story started with Assimil because when I wanted to learn Germany and I could speak only Portuguese, my dad bought me the book from Assimil, and I think it wasn't that expensive in 2012. So it was a book called The New German uh, Without Cost. So in Portuguese, O Novo Alemão Sem Custo from Assimil. It was the first time that I saw some results while learning languages by myself. So I really like the resource. So for people who do not know, Assimil, you I think is a great resource to start learning a language from scratch because you have very simple dialogues. They are getting harder, but you have grammar explanations, and you have, just like I said, that Luca Lamparello loves, and I agree with him. It's also very important to have the translation. So you have on the other page the translation, and from Chinese you have even written word by word what each of the words mean. So I think it's a great resource to start learning a new language. Of course, many people have this issue with Assimil that of course, it has so many stories. Yeah, so many people they start finding it a little bit boring, and after some time doing that, after 6 months or something, they move to another resource, and they don't continue with Assimil. But it's okay. But I think in the beginning, it's a great resource.
No, I think it's probably one of the best. Like actually, because you buy this and then like you said, you have so many stories. You have all these possibilities like to translate, and like I feel like it's if you can afford it, I think it's one of the best materials you can get for stories. Like I think it's the best if you compare it to the other ones, honestly. And they are not paying me. Like I'm not promoting anything. But I feel like because not only you talk to me about Assimil, but also Luca Lampariello and how he explains why it's important to use a tool like this. Even especially if you're not an experienced language learner, like and you're just starting out with this language, I think it's amazing. By the way, the prices are varying in Brazil from 200 reais to even 900 reais. So it starts from 200 and it ranges to 900. Depends on the language or the
Wow,
material.
900 Brazilian reais, that's a lot of money in Brazil.
It's really expensive. I don't understand. I mean, like, I understand why it's expensive because it has a lot. That's the thing. It is expensive because it has a lot of stories. It's a long form. It has audio, right? So it has all the. It's like a course. It's an absolute course, right? It's not a book. It's actually a course.
Yeah,
So that's why.
It's a course. Yeah, exactly. That I think perfect words. And the last one, I think that's my dream course with a story. And I know Davide, and I know how much effort he put on building this project. It's called Italo, and for me, I would love it if we would have something like that for every language. So basically, he created a story called La Storia di Italo. So the story of Italo, and it's for the level, I would say, A2 B1. So to break the plateau, and it's a very good story. So the story is amazing itself. I think even if your Italian is better, like even for me, like I love the story itself. I wanted to know what's going to happen in the story. The story is fantastic. You want to understand everything, every detail. And for me, that I had like an advanced level in Italian, I found some words that I didn't know, but of course I couldn't understand them by the context. However, if even if I wouldn't understand, you can check. You have translation. You have all the resources. You can listen to that. You have even one option to listen to it with effects, just like a movie. Like that you are listening to. Like so for me, this is the dream resource. I wish we would have something like that for every language. Would be very useful to learn from something like that. And yeah, I will leave actually the link for all the stories from all the content from Davide here. You can find Italo there, La Storia di Italo. So if you're learning Italian, for me, this is an amazing resource. And you have flashcards, you have a lot of things there, everything included in this story that has, I think, 14 chapters, I believe, or 12. So yeah, it's great.
Again, a
Have you
no-brainer.
taken a look?
I haven't seen it yet, but I'll definitely use for
Yeah,
Italian when I
yeah.
retake Italian because I really need a resource like that. That would be really helpful for me. Also, like I said before, I think I don't know, for those who don't know Davide, right? Davide Chamelo, he's a polyglot. He speaks like his Russian is amazing. He knows a lot about language learning.
His
Uh,
Portuguese is amazing. Yeah?
his Portuguese is amazing. So like when someone does something like that, like I said, someone puts effort into creating a product that they know like how one is supposed to learn languages and what works, what doesn't. I feel like you should definitely like check it out and see if you like it. You should definitely try it. And I'll definitely use it as well because I want to improve my Italian again because my Italian has been in the freezer for now. But it's always frustrating when you see your level decaying. You're like, oh no, Italian is dying. What is happening? Yeah. And also, sometimes I get lazy because if you know Portuguese, Spanish, like it understands or like, oh, it's fine, right? But it's not fine. Never, don't let your languages die. I mean, it's okay to choose others, but if you wanna, like, if you need the language or if this language is a priority in your life, like, don't let it die. Okay. Um, that being said, I will definitely check it out. So, can you say the name again? It's Italo.
Italo, La Storia di Italo.
La Storia di Italo. I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the one more thing I wanted to say before we go into the end of the episode, um, I really feel like before I had a weird relationship with translations years ago, not now, because now, for example, I'm learning Chinese or I'm learning like Russian. If I don't translate, I'm dead. But before, when I was learning, and that is why I had a problem with translation, is when I was learning Romance languages. You know, because when you're learning Romance languages, everything is fine. Like I'm Brazilian, so like just the listening based, you could get
Yeah.
stuff from context,
And stories
right?
can be great for languages that are similar to yours,
Yes.
that even if it's in a higher level, right? It's a very good point.
That's exactly it. So that's why. But before, I didn't know that. I didn't think like that. I just thought that why would you need translations all the time? And then I started learning like Serbian,
Russian.
Russian, and then like Chinese. I was like, bro, you need translation.
Oh, but also a good point about the Olly stories in Russian, that it has um, the stressed syllable has a sign on it, so you know how to pronounce things, which is great. If you are learning Russian, you know the nightmare it is to know where the stress in the syllable is. So I love this resource. It helps. It's very useful. So there are some mistakes, but in general, like 99% are correct, and it's amazing. And going to the end of this episode, I want to ask you two questions. One, do you think learning from stories is the best method? And the second one, what do you think people should be careful about when trying to learn from stories? What they should try to find in the stories that they want to learn from?
These are amazing questions. I'm a someone who likes a lot of dialogue and interaction. So I don't think for me the best method is to only use stories. Not for me, but I feel like it's a great method, and I definitely have used it, and I do use it for Chinese as part of my learning. It really depends on what you like to consume, on what you like to do. If you like stories, I think it's going to be the best method for you. But I definitely think it's very, very useful. What people should pay attention when watch out is like if they are not experienced language learners or if they're just starting out with the language, you have to be careful which material you choose. I think this episode that you heard from us can definitely help you choose the best one for you, depending on your goals and your level. And also, just having the before you start consuming that material, the story that you're going to learn, that you're going to study or read, you should know that you won't understand, especially if you're starting out, you won't understand much. So you need to have that in you. That, for example, and
Just
my
sit
goal
and
is
work.
not exactly my goal is not to understand everything here because that's not going to happen. Just have this idea that you're there to learn and the story because we're used to understanding stuff. It's frustrating when you don't understand shit. So I think it's really important that you have that in mind. Be careful with what your expectations before starting to use the material.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So my final message about stories, I would say that it's not the best method. I think there isn't such a thing like the best method. However, I think it's crucial when you want to reach the intermediate level and also the advanced level because you need this input. This is comprehensible, compelling, interesting input that you can do it many times, like listen to many times, read many times, and to absorb by immersion, by context. So, and if I would say you gave like amazing feedback um, tip about how to what to bear in mind when you want to learn from stories, I would say that translation is important. You always need to find something with translation, something that includes dialogues that not only dialogues, but I would say that includes dialogues. Something that has I said it translations. I would say for your level, like something compelling that is interesting, and something with audio. I would say audio is crucial. It's one of the main things because you need to listen to know how it's pronounced, and it's something that is pronounced by a native speaker with a native like speed, maybe not too fast but not too slow, in a good speed that you can listen to many times and absorb that. I remember with all the richer stories, I was listening so many times that I memorized even some of the phrases, and it was great like how I was learning it. I mean, if you know Stephen Krashen, you know what we are talking about. I learning from stars and from Impa. So I bought a book when I was studying a little bit about Stephen Krashen, and I wanted to apply that, and I saw that it worked. Unfortunately, the Olly Richer stars back then for me, they were not very useful for my level. So, but now it is. But when I started learning Ukrainian and Belarusian, I used a lot the mini stars from Link, and it was great. And yeah, and Italo, as I said, my dream course. I wish it would be for available for every language, something like that, because it's amazing.
Oh, absolutely. So Italo for you is for me what is Nikos Vag for German, which I went for all languages as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. I think you summed it up like brilliantly. Like definitely, I
Yeah,
couldn't have said it any better. If you want to learn this language like Chinese and you just read a book, it's gonna be really hard how to learn the pronunciation. So you need audio, like especially if the language is like not a language that's very far away, like from your native language, for example.
100%. Yeah. So great. Thanks for this amazing episode. We talked a lot. Very useful episode. I wish I knew something like that. We had an episode about learning of stories like that before I started learning and making my mistakes with that. And yeah, our message is if you want the full episodes, just become our patron, and don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to LingoCast in the podcast platforms.
Thank you so much for listening, guys. I'm sure that you're taking value out of this. Make sure you and yeah, interact with us. Leave a comment. Send us a message. Tell us what you think. Give us feedback. We want to know what you guys think. See you in the next one. Bye bye.